morning, and we are 12 days into August, 9:08 a.m. Good morning. Good morning, New Hampshire. Good morning, Maine. Good morning, New England. Good morning nationally and worldwide at the Pulse of an H. Hey, Google. Hey, Alexa, play the Pulse of an H. J-Dog on the boards. We're also coming to you live this morning on YouTube. If you want to do the video thing live at the Pulse of an H, our poll question this morning on the Pulse of an H, actually at X, on X at the Pulse of an H. Everything with us to make it easy, unlike your passwords, and no one can remember those sometimes. Too many of them are. We have one for you here. It's called the Pulse of an H. And our poll question up on X this morning has to do with real estate. Yesterday, another all-time high, the median home price in New Hampshire inching up closer to 600,000. Was it now 580? That's just the average across the board. That's everything here. Do you think New Hampshire home prices will continue to surge? Yes or no? J-Dog, results from yesterday regarding the WNBA.
Despite the recent controversies, do you watch the WNBA? 91.7% saying no, 8.3% saying yes.
All right. Let's get to what you just heard from Chris at Fox News, and let me set the stage. We have a very good show in terms of variety today. We're going to have our own White House correspondent, John Decker, coming up right around the corner, and he flew in the new Air Force One yesterday in that trip, and he got some questions into the president. Dean Spiliotis will join us in a moment as one of our political analysts and all-stars and experts on the results yesterday. Surprise, at least I didn't see this one coming, and I want to make a very quick point on this. In Wisconsin, Francesca Honk did not win that Democratic primary for governor. She was the proud declared Democratic socialist. And get this one, the polls. So here we go again. When are we going to learn? The polls, let me repeat that. The polls had her, the socialist candidate for governor as a Democrat in Wisconsin, double-digit lead over her opponent, who had actually suspended his campaign and then reactivated it and won yesterday. She lost. It was a tight race, but the polls had her double-digit. The most recent Senate primary in Michigan had Abdul El Sayed double-digit lead, and he barely won. So these polls that we all rely on, whether it's New Hampshire, Senate race, Chris Pappas, the Republicans, Johnny Sununu, Scott Brown, the congressional races, President Trump's approval ratings in New Hampshire. Are we to believe these polls? They're wrong. They were wrong again in Wisconsin. Every news story going into yesterday morning is the socialist candidate had the momentum in Wisconsin. And you were hearing about her name, all about her, and she lost, and here we go again. And, in New Hampshire, we don't even really do the polls. University of New Hampshire, Andy Smith was on my show explaining that it's so hard to get a real measurement of the voting public because do you answer? Do you listening right now? And by the way, thank you. Good morning, New Hampshire. I hope you're having a good morning. Good morning, New England. Good morning, worldwide. Hey, Google. Hey, Alexa, play the Pulse of an H. Do you answer? Do you take part in polls? I don't. I just assume it's spam when I get something on one of these calls. So who is being polled? They're wrong. They're wrong more than they're right. And here we go again. So we'll come back to that. But we have a lot of results to get to. A little bit later on, Anna Brown, Citizens Count. We're going to get an update. And we also are going to be hearing about our Birdies and Brewfest effort Friday. Jason's going to talk about that at Stonebridge. We're raising money and awareness to support 26 nonprofits, food pantries in our market. 26. Very worthwhile, noble effort. And we told you, and you'll hear from our friends at Gather Foods in Portsmouth on Friday. 26 food pantries. Just Gather alone in Portsmouth each month now is supplying and helping and basically providing food to 10,000 people a month. Speaking of average home prices, the seacoast of New Hampshire, Greater Portsmouth, one of the more affluent areas in the state, if not the region, and 10,000 people are requiring food support they're getting from Gather. So Friday, we here at the Pulse of an H and Binney Media, we're doing a big support drive there. Also, we got some other stuff to tell you about, but we do have some breaking news here. So let me get right to it. And the breaking news has to do with the University of New Hampshire in Durham. Have confirmed that the Senate president, the state Senate president, Sharon Carson, has sent a letter to, I guess it would be the chancellor or president of the University of New Hampshire, that the Senate president is going to conduct a full financial audit of the University of New Hampshire Durham operations, a full blown financial audit. And I'm being told by people, let's just say reliable sources within the university system, I'm being told at UNH that the professors there are in an impasse with the administration over a new deal, that the morale, I spoke with one senior member who, well, provided me and sent me in communications, 30 years they've been there, never seen anything like this. The lack of leadership and the morale is that low. Everyone's kind of at I guess, a standstill here, and it's sad because this is our flagship. And let me be very clear: I am a fan of our universities and our university system. I'm a proud dad of at least a couple of kids that went through the system, at least UNH and Plymouth State University and New Hampshire Technical Institute for some education, and a big fan of our universities, but I'm a very big fan of our community college system, and I'll come back to that. But things at UNH, it doesn't stop there. They're in the midst right now of, it's somewhere between a $10 and $17.5 million reduction in spending plan because of declining enrollment and the trends for less students going to our four-year universities. UNH in Durham already is facing upwards of a $10 million, I guess you'd call it, shortfall or budget cut. Now, the trustees recently, we had this story for you first, had voted on something that would need, I think, Senate approval, and I don't think they're going to get it, to streamline all three of our four-year colleges or university. I only say that because Keene State, technically, I guess, is still Keene State College, but Plymouth State University, UNH Durham, to streamline the three four-year colleges and universities in New Hampshire under one chancellor, presumably the current president of UNH Durham, to run Plymouth State and the other two. And I'm being told by people that Plymouth State University folks and Keene State, they don't like that. They want to be autonomous and they don't want to be controlled by UNH and Durham. But the bigger story now is this audit. Good Morning New Hampshire, my show here, we're being told that the Senate President, Sharon Carson, has sent a letter to the leaders in Durham, or the president of the University of New Hampshire in Durham, that Senate President is going to lead a full-blown financial audit of University of New Hampshire in Durham. And what I'm being told is that audit may show a bloating of administrative positions, not faculty, not frontline workers at UNH, not the folks that are teaching math and English and algebra or nursing. We're being told that the number of what you call administrative senior folks who are getting pretty hefty salaries is probably a problem of spending over there in terms of being more efficient, and that the audit may show how many, and I'm not an academic type. Those who listen to my show know that I'd last a week or two on a campus because I'm a little too hyper and out of the box and innovative and entrepreneurial, and that doesn't fit well when you have silos and turf wars. But I don't know the difference between like an associate dean, an assistant dean, a vice president, head of this, head of that. But I'm being told that the UNH Durham has plenty of senior administrative officials. And one official told me that he thinks that the system could operate just fine with about 80% less of senior administration officials and more doers, more workers. But the faculty's in an impasse. They just announced that recently. There's a reduction. In fact, there's a shortage of faculty, I'm being told, and they're not being filled. And the morale is quite an issue. But again, the audit being ordered or initiated by the Senate president, the state Senate president, Sharon Carson. And that's quite a step, by the way, quite a bold step. You don't always hear that the Senate president of New Hampshire is conducting an audit of our flagship university in Durham over financial concerns. So not a great picture. And, dumb me, meaning non-academic me, and I say that somewhat, facetiously, The growth clearly in our higher education system in New Hampshire and the university is with our 7 community colleges. Let me repeat that. The growth of enrollment, more demand for more programs, the growth at our community colleges is going up sharply. We had the head of Lakes Region Community College in recently, and I think I asked him point blank, how much are you up year over year? And let's just say it's something like 40%. That's not the case at Plymouth State University. I'm being told that some of these universities are 4-year universities in New Hampshire. And again, another high level source telling me they're actually looking at buildings to start selling because they're so worried about cuts coming. And this is your higher education in New Hampshire. And even if you don't have kids going there, the state does support it, even if some say it's not enough. But the community college system is growing. The 4-year universities have declining enrollment and budget cuts. So let me ask you a question. In the commonsensical world, wouldn't you overlap the community college system, put the growth right on the 4-year university system campuses, put the growth right on there, put the community colleges right on Durham, right on Plymouth State, right on Keene, get the growth, and many of those 2-year associate degree students may finish there. But if you have growth, it lifts all boats. Synergistic growth, some commentary. And as I said before, I would put Chuck Lloyd, who's recently appointed chancellor of the community college system, in charge of the whole thing. Out of the box, entrepreneur, innovative. All right, that's what education needs. That's what it lacks. But an audit being ordered by the Senate president of UNH Durham. Jack Heath, J-Doc, and the board's back with Dean Spiliotis looking at these primary results. And the polls are wrong. Once again, back in a moment.
Life is messy, dating can be confusing, and sometimes your best look
It matters. Check out the Pulse of NH Daily Poll every day on X, powered by R&D Paving. This is Good Morning New Hampshire with Jack Heath on the Pulse of New Hampshire.
Well, I like to, I'll tell you, if I was off or missed something a little bit, and I did not see this one coming, but our next expert and political all-star Dean Spiliotis, retired Southern New Hampshire University political scientist and regular contributor. You said it yesterday, Dean. You kind of nicely corrected me saying, well, Jack, the polls were tighter in Michigan, and they're showing Francesca Hong with a lead, but it doesn't mean she's going to win this thing. And you were right. So you were right, Dean. I thought the Democratic Socialists had this thing wrapped up, and it goes to show you once again, they were showing double-digit lead for her going into yesterday, and she lost, even though it was close.
Yeah.
These polls are not to be believed anymore.
Yeah, I mean, good morning, Jack. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see kind of how much of this. I mean, I don't know that we'll ever figure it out for sure, but how much of this was polling error, and how much of this was simply Democrats in the state realizing the situation they were in, paying closer attention. Her candidacy in the period of just a few weeks went from a kind of local or regional concern to one that got a tremendous amount of national attention as part of this larger narrative of a DSA takeover of the Democratic Party. And as I said yesterday in the show, I think I started paying attention a few weeks ago. This was not something that was super high on my radar, but I started paying attention to her a few weeks ago. And, putting aside the whole issue of ideology and kind of how out there some of her positions were, she just was not a very strong candidate.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that came through. I think people started watching her try to explain her positions over the last few weeks. And she was not particularly persuasive at it. And I think the Democratic governor grew concerned, literally brought Crowley back into the race. He had dropped out. And took him around the state campaigning, saying that she can't win in a general against the Republican, but Crowley might be able to. So, I mean, it may have been the polling was way off, but I do think that part of it was also people simply paying closer attention over the last few weeks. And I don't have a lot of contacts out in that state, but from what I was reading, the Democrats were in a bit of a panic that should those polls be true, and should she win handily, that she was not really prepared to win a statewide race.
Do you think this could be the start of something? In other words, because yesterday, had Hong won that primary, it really was convincing me that AOC was just going to prime up and run for president and take advantage of this energy and be sort of that first, wave rider trying to win the White House, where Bernie Sanders just couldn't really get out of the starting gate. Do you think this starts to be a trend here, or is it too late? I mean, is too many socialists already won these primaries in key House and Senate races?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. A couple of thoughts about that. The first thing to note is that neither Bernie Sanders nor AOC endorsed Hong in Wisconsin. They kept away from her. So that tells you something right there. I've argued all along, many times on your show, that I think the sort of DSA takeover of the Democratic Party, that narrative is maybe being pushed a little bit too hard. I mean, I understand there are legitimate campaign reasons why Republicans would want to make that argument. But talking to people within the Democratic Party, I think it's just more variable. I think it really depends on the part of the country. I think there are some sort of urban contexts and regional contexts where maybe that will work, but it's not going to work in other parts. And I think if Democrats are smart, they'll try to figure out a way to accommodate these sort of differing perspectives. Say compare a Mikey Sherrill, the governor of New Jersey, or Abigail Spanberger, the governor of Virginia, or even Alyssa Slotkin, who is a senator from Michigan, much more kind of national security Democrats, much more centrist. The party needs to figure out how to let these kinds of different perspectives coexist. That's not an easy thing to do, But that's probably their best option. You know, as far as AOC is concerned, I think I mentioned yesterday I watched a long interview with her on ABC with John Carl from the weekend,
Mhm.
and I encourage listeners to do it. She's a much more mature, disciplined politician than she was 8 years ago when she was first elected. I mean, it's immediately noticeable. She's a lot more measured, a lot more careful about what she will commit to. She's clearly thinking about running for president, but she's probably also thinking about Chuck Schumer's Senate seat.
Yeah,
So we'll see. But she's going to be a player. She's going to be she's a player going forward.
Well, regardless of how these primaries continue, or if we kind of reached a tipping point,
Right.
it's very clear to me after what happened, really after Mondami's New York City mayoral win, it was very clear, even if he flames out and is a very non-successful mayor there, he, AOC, Bernie, even some members of the squad, they're the current energy and leaders of the Democratic Party nationally right now. And even if they're not the majority, they're the ones that the rest of the more moderate Democrat establishment fears, and the energy there. And we've seen it here in New Hampshire, Dean Spiliotis. It hasn't spilled over into a vote, but I distinctly remember it was well over a year ago. Maggie Goodlander, Congresswoman, 2nd Congressional District. This was during the government shutdown, the big one that Schumer was pushing, and Trump was this and all that. And she had a town hall, a meeting in Concord, her district, 2nd District. And these were all Democrats showing up. And they were yelling and screaming at her for not, breaking the furniture and shouting and screaming in Congress louder. I think it was over the health insurance stuff. And, it's just a smaller percentage, but it's the loudest percentage. So we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, I mean, the challenge is obviously the if you want to call them the Democratic establishment or the more moderate wing of the party, they need strong communicators. I mean, the one thing that all the people you mentioned have in common, Mamdani, AOC, El Sayed, even Bernie, they're all strong communicators with their base of the party, and they're good at getting their base tied in and bought into the campaign. And so, if moderates want to do that, they have to be able to compete in terms of messaging. And
you've had a whole running career in political science in university. Are we reaching a point where these polls are just not believable?
I've been, the polls have been disappointing for a while now. I mean, part of it is just there are structural problems with polling and primaries to begin with, in terms of getting a sufficient sample and really figuring out who's actually going to turn out and vote. There's just so much polling now.
Yeah.
That there's just a lot of fast and loose polling. Not all polls are created equal. We got the whole cell phone issue now. I have colleagues at other universities who are kind of working on methodologically figuring out how you can do this online in a way that is statistically robust. So you got to be really, really careful with these polls.
All right, Dean Spiliotis, thank you. We're going to take a break. Coming back, our own White House correspondent John Decker live. He had a ride in the new Air Force One. And Neil Levesque on deck next.
News, information,
Decker, our own White House correspondent. All I know is he got a nice ride on the new Air Force One. Good morning, John.
Hey, good morning to you, Jack. Hope you're doing well today. It was a day trip that the president took, and I was with him to Ohio. It is an upscale plane, no doubt about it. Much larger press section of the plane, and glad I had the opportunity to do that yesterday.
Well, it's but a lot going on. And the president did comment on everything from another situation with Air Force One and a decoy leaving a summit.
Yes.
But there's also, the latest on what's going on with the war in Iran, the Strait of Hormuz. I don't know where that goes, as well as some of these primaries.
Well, that's right. When the president landed back at Andrews Air Force Base, he took some questions from reporters, took a number of questions from me, and I focused my questions on the war in Iran and also the Senate race in South Carolina. The president made some news in telling me that he intends to travel down to South Carolina to campaign for Darlene Graham, who will now face Congressman Ralph Norman in a runoff election. That will be on August the 25th. And it certainly helps Senator Darlene Graham that she has President Trump's endorsement in that Republican primary.
And she was quick to say that when she kind of got into the runoff. John, in South Carolina, is the winner of that Republican primary the winner of the ultimate race?
Oh, absolutely. It's a red state, so
Yeah.
whoever emerges as the nominee for Republicans in that Senate primary runoff will be the next senator from South Carolina.
John Decker. Thank you, John.
Thanks, Jack.
All right. I believe Neil Levesque is joining us now, Institute of Politics Executive Director, St. Anselm College. Good morning, Mr. Neil.
Good morning, Jack.
Well, let me start with polls. You do polls, and I guess UNH does surveys, and you can explain the difference. But here we go again. It seemed like the narrative, and I bought into it yesterday in Wisconsin, was that the Democratic Socialist Francesca Hong was going to win that primary in the Democratic race for governor, and the poll showed her with a double-digit lead going into yesterday, and she came up short. So you look at polls here in New Hampshire and New England. I'm not saying you, but other outside polls that will look at the U.S. Senate race here, President Trump's favorability or approval rating here, and we hear a number. Are these polls believable?
Well, I can't speak for their polls. I think that sometimes people, particularly in academic settings, I think that it happens in academic settings where they weigh certain groups or certain crosstabs of people who they believe are motivated to vote, and they're not. And so that always happens, by the way, with 18 to 29-year-olds, where pollsters, particularly those, I think, from universities, say, oh, this is, we're going to definitely weigh that these people are turning out. Of course, 18 to 29-year-old people really don't turn out in any great number. So they weigh it wrong. The data is coming in, but they weigh it wrong. The other thing I'd say about some of this socialism stuff is it might be a little bit overblown. There's not really much to talk about in politics other than some of the things with Air Force One these days, but it seems to be a flashpoint for people when the Democrats seem to have some motivation, at least looking at the polling. And this is something that I think is probably going to detract from their energy, is that if the Republicans can claim that these people are really, like, as they call them, communists, and they're socialists,
to extreme, yeah.
Thanksgiving, yeah. These types of things are. But is it real or is it overblown? We're going to get this test the day after Labor Day here in New Hampshire.
But Neil, one poll that's pretty consistent, and we did an interesting podcast. We got to get you back on, excuse me, our Contact Politics. But Jason Rowe yesterday is a pretty sharp national analyst, and he was on. We were talking about 66%. Speaking of polls, if you can believe them, this spring and early summer showed 66% of younger Democrat voters who identified themselves as Democrat voters identify themselves more positively with socialism than capitalism. So it is it's not just a blip or a sideshow within the Democratic Party. I mean, I think AOC is probably as likely to run for president as senator in New York. It's real. I mean, the energy and the leaders now in the Democrat Party don't seem to be Gavin Newsom or Governor Shapiro or Pete Buttigieg. They seem to be Bernie Sanders, AOC, the mayor of New York City. Am I wrong or right?
I think the extremes are sort of starting to win or at least percolate to the top in both sides of the aisle. And I think that young people probably, if you boil down that socialism thing, they probably don't know much about what it is, but they're energized by certain candidates, like the mayor of New York.
Yeah, you talk about free stuff, Neil. Hey, Neil, if you and I were a little more naive when someone started saying, hey, you don't have to pay your property taxes in New Hampshire. You don't have to pay to asphalt your driveway. You don't have to pay for your grandkids' child care. You don't have to pay for groceries. Yeah, we'd probably say that sounds all pretty good, right?
Well, I think that's the case, and that's been the situation in politics for many years, where some politicians win by claiming that they're going to give out handouts to certain groups.
Yeah.
And by the way, that doesn't just happen on the left.
Yeah.
It can happen on the right.
Right. Hey, let me ask you, this guest we had yesterday, Jason Rowe, Brad Card, and I on the podcast, I asked him, because we talked quite a bit about what's going on within the Democratic Party, and we also talked about kind of the Republican Party post-Trump. How active will President Trump, Donald Trump, stay with his $400 million fund, if you will, as the influencer, as the kingmaker in the Republican Party? You know, is J.D. Vance the slam dunk nominee in 2028? I guess the question is on the Democrat side. I asked our guests, Jason, I'm going to ask you a question. This socialism push on the progressive side of the Democratic Party is not just a blip. More than 36 Democratic socialists have won primaries in America this primary season in local, state, city, state, and federal primaries. Bernie Sanders used to be considered an outlier. Now he's kind of the patriarch of opening the door here. So my question was to him, where did this come from? What led to so many younger Democrat voters identifying more with socialism than, for example, capitalism? And you know what his answer was, Neil? And you just alluded to it. It's where, not you, St. Anselm, but it's where you work. He said it's the result of 20 plus years of liberal professors in universities and colleges not teaching college students the woes of failed socialism in countries like Venezuela, Cuba, North Korea, China, and telling the students, like Columbia University professors, that America is bad, that we're a bad country, that our history is bad, capitalism is bad, socialism is good. And he said that really took its toll on a lot of young people going to college, having professors just sort of paint a bad picture of this country and our history and a positive picture, not teaching them about socialism, but making it sound like it's a cool, neat thing. Do you agree with any of that or not?
No, I think that academia has been sort of viewed from the left for much longer than 20 years. But for some reason, we still have plenty of people who become conservatives and who embrace capitalism when they leave the college.
No, but do you agree with his assertion of basically
I think that a lot
higher educational brainwashing almost?
No, I don't agree with it. I think, sure, does it happen? Sure. But is that the reason? No. It could be that the other side, meaning the president, is turning off young voters. It could be that there really isn't the ideological space anymore in policy. Let me give you an example. 2 months ago, the president of the United States gave $12 billion in additional money, tax money, to soybean farmers. So if Mandami is a socialist and he wants free bus tickets for for people in New York City, okay, he's claiming he's a socialist. But what happens when you're going to give $12 billion to soybean farmers? I mean, that's tax dollars going out to a group too, in order to gain their votes or their political strength. And
good point. No,
I
good
just
point.
don't think that people really know what socialism really is. And I think that they like Mandami and his brand, AOC, et cetera, because she's young and he's young, and they're sort of fighting the man. And fighting the man, a lot of young people enjoy. And that's the great thing about Bernie Sanders was I don't think people dug very deep into what his real
Oh no, I
policy
remember having Bernie on right before the presidential primary in New Hampshire. He was talking about taxes and making the rich pay their fair share. So I said, "What is that? And what is your specific income tax changes and proposals?" And he yelled at me in the interview. It was live on my show. He said, "Jack, I don't have a big staff to come up with that. I haven't figured that out yet." I go, "No, I just asked you where are you going to adjust income taxes for certain earners in America? Where are the lines?" He goes, "I'm working on it." I go, "Senator, the election's Tuesday." But to your point, I think the other thing too is I think this progressive energy on the far left is also fueled by a very strong anti-Trump sentiment. And I think you combine that with, the more socialist appeal, and I think that's what you're getting. But all right, Neil, on this Wednesday, thank you, Neil Levesque.
Thank you, Jack.
We go back. Inflationary numbers not as high. Doug Tengman, World Market Advisors, on deck next.
107.7
with Jack Heath on the Pulse of New Hampshire.
All right, we are back, and I haven't even had a chance this morning, now that markets are open, to look at the inflationary index and measurements. But Doug Tengden has, World Market Advisors, on this Wednesday morning. Good morning, Doug.
Good morning, Jack. How are you?
Doing okay, thanks. What does it show?
It shows that inflation is running below expectations, and it's coming in. It's coming in gradually to a lower level. Year over year, core inflation is now 2.5%. The headline number year over year is at 3.5, but that's all, that's food and energy, which we know it can be volatile. We know that energy prices are up because of the war, and if the Fed raises rates, it's not gonna push energy prices down because they're up because of the war. So this is just more evidence that Kevin Warsh was right to tell the Fed just cool it, to sit on its hands and not raise rates, which is what we talked about on Monday, and we talked about the week before. The economy is cooling off and inflation is cooling off, and while prices are still high, we also know the response to prices being high. It's not the Fed pushing us into recession to push prices lower. That is not a solution.
Well, we've talked a lot about the cost of everything. The cost of living is high. Cost of housing is high. I just know that if you're going to borrow money to do any kind of a mortgage right now, even if you can tell me historically, fixed interest rates for homes used to be double digits, and then they went as low as 2.8% or whatever they got down to. Right now it's high and it's expensive. And I think it's putting putting a damper on housing, unless you are so well to do that you're buying a $2 or $3 or $4 million home in New Hampshire, moving here from another state like New York or somewhere that was overregulated and taxed, and you're not borrowing any money.
Yeah, and I think you put your finger on it, Jack, with the word regulation. I mean, there's lots of land available for people to build. We just have regulations that stop people from building. The solution to high housing prices is building more houses. And if you can build more houses in an affordable way by reducing the regulations, reducing some of these nonsensical restrictions people have on the land they can use, well, then we'll have lower housing prices because people will be able to move into cheaper houses that are new. But if we just keep saying, not in my backyard, I don't want to build it here. No, go somewhere else. If we increase the lot size, shoot, here in Hanover, it's 10 acres. Why not make it 15 acres? Why not make it 20? Just pull up the ladder after you get in. Well, then housing prices are going to be high. I think the legislature could get on it by saying statewide we could have a 3 acre maximum lot size. That would be something that the politicians could do that would actually make a difference in people's lives. But when did they want to actually do that?
Yeah. All right, Doug, anything else as you're getting going this morning? And what are we looking at? We're looking at Labor Day, probably September is the next benchmark. What are the chances that the Fed would lower the rate bank to bank, which would spill down 0.25% by the end of the year?
Well, not by the end of the year, but maybe next year. I mean, when we look at the economy, Jack, without AI, without the buildup from AI, this economy would be flat. The economy is growing because we're building out AI. AI is providing a tremendous productivity boost in all kinds of different areas. That is going to feed through eventually to lower inflation because it's a productivity boost. We'll see that eventually, but it won't be tomorrow and it won't be next month. It'll be next year or the year after. But things will get better if we don't get in the way of it. That's another way politicians could screw it up. Oh, let's turn off AI. Let's mandate a kill switch, and let's make sure that the U.S. doesn't lead in AI the way we do now. Let's make sure that somebody else does the leading because what we want is more regulation. That'll solve everything, right?
Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. All right, thank you, Doug.
All right, Jack, you have a great weekend.
Yeah, the problem is builders are telling me they can't build a home now we want more homes. They can't build a home now for much under $1 million or $1.2 million bucks. Just the cost of everything has doubled. So we'll see where it goes. I do want to mention, we'll come back to this in the next hour. We're going to hear from Anna Brown, Citizens Count. I shared with you earlier this morning, and you heard it here first, that being my show, we're being told, and a letter actually has gone out from the New Hampshire State Senate President Sharon Carson to the, I guess, Chancellor or President of the University of New Hampshire, Durham, with the Senate President intends to conduct and oversee a full financial audit of the University of New Hampshire and Durham and all its financial operations. I'm being told that letter informing the head of UNH or the powers to be there that the state Senate president is doing this audit went over like a lead balloon, that they're not too happy about it. The faculty there recently announced at UNH Durham they're at an impasse on trying to get a new deal or contract with the administration, being told by tenured senior professors that a lot of professors have left. The positions aren't being filled. UNH Durham's already facing at least a $10 million or higher budget hole because of declining enrollment and other spending reductions. And finally, being told by senior staff folks at UNH and Durham that the morale is very low. One said it's the lowest they've seen in 3 decades. And so where this goes, who knows? It's a beautiful campus and a wonderful flagship university. I had a couple kids go through the system there, and I am a big fan of it. But you know what is hitting the fan. And Senate President now going to conduct a full audit of UNH Durham, and I'm being told that it may show a bloating at the administrative level of salaries versus the professor level, but we'll see where it goes. And that's coming up in a little bit. Anna Brown, Citizens Count, citizenscount.org. We'll get a check-in from the Seacoast, Alicia Preston Xanthopoulos. We'll get a check-in live from Paul Steinhauser, Fox News, and our own Good Morning New Hampshire Pulse correspondent, if you will, out there. And he's on the primary trail. And the polls were wrong in Wisconsin. Francesca Hong, the socialist, did not win that Democratic primary for governor. Hey, Google, hey, Alexa, worldwide, play the Pulse of an Age. Back in a moment.